Right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at some really interesting developments in Europe. We've got some reports here on both UK and Germany, and some of this stuff is pretty wild.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is how these two countries are kind of feeding into each other, right? Like what happens in the UK in terms of inflation could easily spill over into the Eurozone, and what Germany is doing right now could really shift the whole balance of power in the EU.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all connected, isn't it? But let's start with the UK for now, where one economist we read is really sounding the alarm bells, um, saying that, and I'm just going to quote this directly: the MPC is wrong to assume this year's inflation rise will have no second round effects.
Mhm.
Okay,
Right.
so that might sound a little jargony, but this is a really big deal. So what are these second round effects that they're talking about, and why should we be worried?
Yeah, so basically what they're talking about is this fear of a wage price spiral.
Right.
So prices go up, people demand higher wages to keep up with the rising cost of living. Then businesses have to raise prices even more to cover those wages, and then boom, you've got this spiral, this inflation spiral that just feeds on itself and gets out of control.
Right, right. It just keeps going up and up and up. And this is where things get really interesting because, I mean, just last year, the Bank of England governor was talking all about anchoring inflation expectations, remember?
Uh-huh.
But then they go and they cut interest rates, which seems like the exact opposite of what you do if you're trying to fight inflation.
Yeah.
Right. Like doesn't raising interest rates usually, cool things down?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, traditionally, raising interest rates has always been the go-to move to try to combat inflation, right?
Right.
Because it makes borrowing more expensive, which slows down spending, and theoretically that helps to bring those price increases under control. So yeah, these rate cuts they're definitely raising some eyebrows and making people wonder if the bank is maybe starting to lose control a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at their own survey data, which shows that the public is expecting both inflation and interest rates to keep rising. It's almost like they're losing the confidence game,
Yeah.
right? Like if everyone thinks that inflation is just going to keep soaring, then won't they start acting in ways that actually make it even worse, like demanding even higher wages or hoarding goods or I don't know, just doing things that make the whole situation even more unstable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the real danger here. Like you said, it's a confidence game, and if people lose confidence in the central bank, then it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the Bank of England is, I mean, they're really walking a tightrope here.
Right.
They're trying to stimulate economic growth at the same time that they're also trying to keep inflation under control, and it's a really tough balance to strike.
Yeah, for sure. And especially when you have voices within the bank itself disagreeing on the best way forward. We read that Catherine Mann, who's one of the members of the Monetary Policy Committee, she's been pretty vocal about her opposition to these rate cuts. I mean, she even voted against them, right? So what does that tell us about the internal dynamics that are at play here within the Bank of England?
Well, it suggests that there's a real debate happening, right? I mean, it's not just a monolithic institution where everyone's on the same page. There are different viewpoints and different opinions about what the priorities should be. And Mann seems to be, she seems to be more hawkish on inflation. She's saying that they need to take stronger action now to prevent things from really spiraling out of control. She's worried about those second round effects that we were talking about earlier, and she's not convinced that these rate cuts are the right way to go.
It really shows you how tricky it is right now, right? Like trying to balance that need for economic growth with this very real threat of inflation just getting totally out of control. It's like they're trying to steer a ship through a storm with two broken rudders or something.
Yeah, no kidding.
And speaking of different approaches, let's move over to Germany now, where they seem to be like throwing all caution to the wind, with this massive new spending program that they've announced.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold move, that's for sure. We're talking about potentially like €1 trillion of investment over the next decade, focused mostly on infrastructure and defense. It's a huge signal of confidence in the German economy, and a real sign that they're willing to take a very different path than what we're seeing in the UK.
Yeah. It's like they're betting big on the future while the UK is kind of scrambling to put out fires in the present.
Right, right.
So tell me more about this spending plan. I mean, we read that the incoming chancellor, Friedrich Merz, that he managed to get the Greens on board, which seemed like a pretty crucial step in making this whole thing happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Getting that agreement with the Greens was a major a major political victory for Merz. I mean, it gives him the supermajority that he needs in Parliament to be able to push through these constitutional changes that are going to allow for this level of borrowing. And it's a really clear indication that Germany is serious about investing in its long-term economic growth. I mean, they're really putting their money where their mouth is on this one.
And it sounds like the markets are pretty excited about it too.
Yeah.
We saw reports that the euro got a nice little boost after the deal was announced. One analyst even said game on again for the EUR. So why are investors reacting so positively to this?
Well, I mean, think about it this way, right? When a country announces that it's going to be pumping €1 trillion into its economy, I mean that sends a pretty strong signal to investors that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for growth there, and that increased demand for euros. That's what drives up its value, right? Plus, I mean, Germany has this reputation for economic stability and responsibility, so investors tend to view their investments there as relatively safe bets. I mean, safer than some other places, at least.
So it's not just about the spending itself; it's also about the confidence that it sort of inspires.
Oh, exactly.
But I also read that there were some concerns about potential setbacks in the negotiations, right? Like people were worried that this whole deal might fall apart. Why was there so much anxiety around that?
Well, I mean, there were definitely some nail biting moments during those negotiations. I mean, remember this deal required a supermajority, right? So Merz he didn't just need the support of his own party; he needed the support of the Greens as well. And the Greens, I mean, with their focus on environmental sustainability, they had some real concerns about the potential impact of all this spending on climate goals. Plus, I mean, anytime you have multiple political parties involved in something like this, there's always that risk of disagreements and delays and things getting bogged down in the political process.
Right.
So yeah, getting this deal across the finish line was a pretty big accomplishment for Merz.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and it also sounds like this whole spending program is a pretty long-term play.
Right.
I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We read that the bulk of the investments won't actually come online until 2026. So why does something like this take so long to actually roll out?
Well, I mean, think of it like building a high-speed rail network or a whole new energy grid. These are massive, complex projects, right? I mean, you're talking about years and years of planning and permitting and construction and testing. I mean, you've got to coordinate with multiple government agencies, private contractors, local communities, and then there's all the environmental impact assessments and the public consultations that have to take place. So it's a huge undertaking, something like this.
So while the euro might be celebrating today, the real impact of this spending program is still a few years away. It's like planting a seed and then waiting for it to grow into a mighty oak tree.
Right, exactly.
You mentioned earlier that this was a very different approach than what we're seeing in the UK. But how do these two seemingly separate stories, the UK battling inflation and then Germany embarking on this huge spending spree, how do they connect to the bigger picture of the European economy as a whole? I mean, what's the connection there?
That's a great question.
It's almost like we're seeing like two totally different economic philosophies playing out in real time right in front of us.
Yeah.
The UK is like taking this really cautious approach, very focused on controlling inflation, even if it means that they have to, maybe sacrifice some growth in the short term.
Right.
And then you've got Germany who's basically saying, hey, we're going to bet big on the future. We think that strategic investment and long-term growth is the best way forward. So how do these two strategies, I mean, how do they interact with each other? And what does it mean for the overall health of the European economy? I mean, is this going to cause some kind of crazy earthquake, or are they going to find a way to coexist peacefully?
Well, that's the million-euro question, isn't it? I mean, it really is. It's a fascinating experiment that's playing out right now, right? On a continental scale.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, you've got the UK, which remember is not part of the Eurozone, right? So they're trying to navigate their own economic path.
Right.
And if they're successful in taming inflation, I mean, it could actually make the UK a more attractive destination for foreign investment.
Oh, interesting.
So it could actually end up, drawing capital away from the Eurozone.
So their success could actually undermine Germany's efforts in a way.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, if the UK's inflation problem, if it really spirals out of control, then that could have a spillover effect on the rest of Europe, right?
Right.
It could erode confidence in European economies overall, and it could even put pressure on the euro itself.
So no matter what happens in the UK, it's going to have implications for the whole continent.
Exactly. Yeah. They're not an island, so to speak, despite being an island.
Right. Right.
And then you've got Germany over there, the economic powerhouse of Europe,
Right.
making these huge investments that could potentially boost growth across the entire Eurozone. So if their gamble pays off, I mean, we could see a real surge in economic activity that lifts all boats,
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's also a risk that these investments could lead to more inflation down the line, especially if they coincide with continued supply chain disruptions or rising energy prices or things like that.
Ugh. It's making my head spin a little bit, honestly.
Yeah.
So many moving parts, so many different potential outcomes. It's hard to even keep track of it all.
It is, yeah.
So for our listener, I mean, what should they be taking away from all this? What's the key insight here? What's the thing that they should really be paying attention to?
I think the key takeaway is that Europe is at a crossroads right now, right? The decisions that are being made, both by individual countries and by the EU as a whole, they're going to have long-lasting consequences.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that economics isn't just about numbers and graphs. It's about choices and priorities and this complex interplay between political and economic forces.
Yeah, for sure. And for our listener who's probably thinking about their own investments and their own financial future, I mean, what does this all mean for them? Where should they be looking? What should they be watching for?
Well, I think if you're looking at Europe as an investment opportunity, I mean, Germany's commitment to long-term growth is definitely something to keep an eye on. But I wouldn't count the UK out just yet either. I mean, they have a very resilient economy, and if they can get inflation under control, they could be poised for a real comeback.
So a little bit of a mixed bag, but with plenty of opportunities out there for those who are paying attention.
Exactly. Yeah. The key is to stay informed and do your research and be prepared for a dynamic and evolving economic landscape.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
All right, deep divers, there you have it. A whirlwind tour of the economic forces that are shaping Europe right now, from inflation anxieties in the UK to a massive stimulus surge in Germany.
Yeah.
It's a complex picture, but
Yeah.
but hopefully we've helped you make a little bit of sense of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe spark some ideas about where to invest your hard-earned euros.
Always good to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
Until next time, deep divers, happy investing.